Well, it's 25 minutes before 8. Staff retention. Now, this is an issue, especially in South Africa, where most of the young employees change jobs more often than the previous generations. We're joined now by Debbie Radford, a human resources specialist, who has reached the desired objective of making her company a R1 billion company and achieving positive staff morale. Also joining us is Craig Yeatman, Managing Director at WorldsView. Both of you, thank you very much for joining us here on Morning Live. Staff retention and the youth. It seems like a word that the youngsters and the youth of today, they're in a job and out of a job. Is that an adequate impression, or am I not hitting the nail on the head? Would you like to take this one?
Sure. I think, firstly, I think young people have always been mobile. But it's not some sort of character defect or current generation problem. I mean, people look for certainty and they look for clarity.
Yeah.
So I suspect that South Africa has its fair share of uncertainty at the moment. In fact, the world does. The compensation that companies like Faratech have managed to put in place is great leadership, providing great clarity and great certainty, which I think provides some sort of magnetic basis, some gravity that the youngsters can find and stay. When you walk through the Faratech office, there are a lot of young people that seem to be sticking around longer and longer. So, yeah, Leanne, I think young people will always be restless, but if you can give them a home where they have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, then they'll stay.
Debbie, what are you doing at Faratech? Why are you managing to retain staff there?
Well, if you talk about the young people being restless, they're going to move to a place where they find a challenge. Now, we would much rather provide that challenge for them internally, so that they don't have to feel as if they have to move to a different organization to get that next growth spurt. So training development is something that we push very hard. It's in fact built into our budget cycles annually, so that it's just something that by default is offered to all staff and available to all staff. So they're constantly growing. Skills transfers happen on the job. We try and move them around into different departments, different roles as best as we can accommodate them, so that they get what they're looking for there and don't have that need to go outside the organization.
When you hear what Faratech is doing, is this sort of almost like a needle in a haystack? Is it one of those companies that is doing it, but the majority aren't doing it?
No, I don't think that's necessarily true. We've been talking to companies like Massmart, McCarthy. This is an initiative that all companies are looking at. But Faratech in particular, we started working with Faratech about 4 years ago. They've paid a lot of attention to making sure that their strategies are clear, that their goals are rolled out through the organization, and then they've used a process called the 9 Conversations in Leadership to make sure that the leadership issue faces particularly the young staff that are coming in. So they're not just investing in leadership development at the top. You want programs that can scale all the way through the organization, so that those youngsters that are facing their first frontline manager are not facing a weak leader. You want leadership throughout the organization to be clear on where Faratech is going, what its objectives are, what its values are, what it stands for. And that, of course, gives that young talent something to hang on to in their front line. You know, the CEO can be a long way away from them. So too many companies are possibly making the mistake that leadership development only happens at the top. That's not true at Faratech. They develop leadership throughout the organization.
You know, it's quite incredible when you walk into a company. From the second you get into a company, you almost immediately feel there's a good vibe in this company. There's actually something right. There's something good happening here. Then there are other companies that you walk into, and from the second you get to the reception, the staff are just sitting there. They're not interested. They don't really care. How do you do this? How do you let it filter from the top right down to whatever your bottom level of employee is?
Yeah, and one of our cornerstones of our business is that we try as much as possible to enable our people to be empowered. So we're really saying to them that if we're going to have a culture shift in this organization, our CEO is not going to make that happen all on his own, or a small elitist group of managers that sit in ivory tower somewhere. Everybody's got to take ownership of this, and they've got to empower themselves to make this kind of work environment that they really want to work in. So, you know, if everybody takes a little bit of responsibility and doesn't say, well, what is this company going to do for me? How am I going to be part of this change? How am I going to have a positive influence on my work, my fellow workers, my colleagues? Then I think you can get that. You can get that positive vibe. But of course, it helps that it's a young company.
Yeah.
In the IT
industry. How old is
Faratech? The company is about 12 years old now, and our staff complement also young. Our average age is 34. So, you know, it's
That's
young,
great.
young vibrant group.
And when you talk about staff retention, how good is it?
We struggle, as do many other companies in the IT sector, but we've got very specific things that we try to do to curb it. So, for example, internal transfers, the training and development things, and then really certainly working very closely with Craig and his team from WorldsView on leadership development, and making sure that our entire organization's leadership and management structure are really able to engage with their employees. Find that one hot button that's going to make that person really feel treasured and special. And that's what makes people stay, is that they really feel engaged. They buy into the purpose. They feel that what they're doing is significant. And with time, we'll curb it.
There's the real question that I want to ask you. What truly makes a South African employee happy? What keeps them in a job?
Well, I don't want to generalize in the sense that there's one kind of South African employee. There are many. But I think one of the characteristics of South Africans is that we like a challenge and we like to feel that we're contributing. So companies that get that right, where we can say, look, Leanne, this is where we're going and this is the part that we need you to play, so that you feel visible within the whole, that you're contributing and you feel that sense of contribution. Another word that we like to use is voice. You know, what you were describing earlier about some companies when you walk in, this theorist Samantha Goshen says, it's the smell of the place. You can smell when you walk in. Do you get eye contact? Are people engaged? Are they happy to be there? You know, that makes South Africans happy. I don't think South Africans like to be stuck in a box and left alone to churn out work. We're quite a community-oriented culture. And so the elements of leadership, not only setting direction, but building communities and helping people to feel that they're engaged with something important. That makes South Africans happy. Anywhere in the world, of course. It's that culture that we seem to be exporting very well. But of course works very well here.
Unfortunately too well, I think. The problem, just on a closing note, I think if we can master this, we could master the service delivery levels in our country, because that's something we truly need to work on, is whether you walk into a shop or whether you go into somewhere like Faratech or you go into any company, you expect the service level where you feel welcome wherever you're going. And I think that as South Africans we need to improve that. And perhaps it stems from exactly what you're saying.
Three parts to it. I mean, to be clear, firstly, that the service level is important and to value it in your heart. But the last piece of leadership is the management piece. That I can make sure that you understand the direction, but we also have to do the hard work of making sure that the management piece is there and the operating models are right. And that's hard work. You know, it's not all soft and fluffy.
Thank you both of you for joining us in the studio. Debbie Radford from Faratech and Craig Yeatman, Managing Director of WorldsView, talking about staff retention in South Africa, and then of course moving on to service levels, which is an all-important conversation to be had, especially in the run-up to 2010, Confederations Cup, you name it. Let's take a break. We'll be with you in a short while. Stay tuned.